Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm gonna be showing you how I painted this watercolor piece. So grab a coffee, sit back and enjoy. Before I start painting, I always make sure that my sketch is clean by picking up pencil leftovers with a knighable eraser. And the reason I do that is because once you wet your sketch, the graphite particles settle into your watercolor paper. And once that happens, you won't be able to erase any of your pencil lines anymore. So it's important to get rid of those before you put any water on your paper. And sometimes I like to erase some lines completely. I have nothing against visible pencil lines in a watercolor painting, but in some areas I just prefer to have none. Once I'm sure that my sketch is good to go, I start painting the first layer, which is the lightest one. I usually leave a lot of white areas to create a strong contrast in my paintings, but in this case I decided to make the piece a little warmer, so my lightest areas are still colored. For the wall and background, I mixed my burnt sienna and some alizarin to get a reddish tone. By the way, here I'm working with a large round brush to be quick. One of the most important rules in watercolors is to always use a brush that is appropriate to the size of the area you want to paint. If I used a smaller brush here, it would have taken me forever to finish. By then the upper area would have become dry and the whole layer would have been stained and dirty. You've probably noticed that I use a small spray bottle here. I like to use it when I paint larger backgrounds to keep the paper moist. However, you need to be very careful not to let droplets run into your light areas. If you spray too often, that can happen very easily, so pay attention. Once the background is dry, I mix burnt sienna and raw umber for the first layer of the armchair. And I keep the mixture as light as I can for the areas that will be hit by the sunlight. For the skin tone, I use simply burnt sienna. While the skin is still wet, I add a little alizarin in some places. For the hair, I use a neutral tint and some raw umber. So now I'm already starting to paint the second layer. For the midtones of the armchair, I use just raw umber. This time with much less water because I want to get a thicker mixture and a much more saturated color. When you're painting in a realistic style with watercolors, it's essential to pay attention to the values of your reference. Take a good look at the highlights, the midtones, and the darkest tones. Going back to the wall in the background, I start painting the second layer, which is just the shadow of the staircase that you don't see. And for that I mix burnt sienna and alizarin again. But this time I'm making sure my mixture is thicker so my value gets darker. I try to work as fast as possible to avoid drying out. And also lines tend to be more precise if your brush strokes are confident. And I use a tissue if the water runs into areas I don't want it to be. Now I'll move on to the body, starting to paint the midtones here. For that I use a mix of Veridita blue and burnt sienna again. For the skin, I'm using burnt sienna again. You see, I love my burnt sienna. While painting, it's important to change the water from time to time. I think that's a no-brainer. You just want to have clean colors at all times. Also, you need clean water for the lifting technique. Here, for example, I want to lighten up her back. And to do that, I take a stiff synthetic brush, dive it into the water, and scratch the color off the paper. Sometimes lifting doesn't work as well as you expect it to do, and that has something to do with the staining ability of some pigments. A color is staining if the pigments are very hard to lift from the paper. Every watercolor supplier offers a chart with its pigments characteristics, so you can easily predict if lifting will work with the color you're using. Usually I'd prefer non-staining colors for the lifting technique, but I find that you really need to be very careful with those kinds of colors. Because if you paint a lot of layers, like I do here on the skin, non-staining colors can cause a very smudgy look, especially when you paint wet on wet. Because every time you wet a colored layer, you pick up the pigments below automatically, so you need to be extra careful here. Moving on to the second layer of the clothing, I'm taking Veridata Blue to paint the shadows cast by the staircase in the background. For the midtones of the hair, I use neutral tint again. So now I'm getting to the most exciting part of the painting process, the third layer and the darkest tones. So that was it. Thank you so much for watching my painting process. See you next time.